It is the Everton Byline. We are back for our 52nd episode. I am Matt Jones. Joining me as ever is Paddy Boyland. Paddy, how are you doing? Did you have a good Saturday night watching Everton in New York?
I had a Saturday night, and I did watch Everton. Whether it was a good Saturday night, I think that's probably the bit I would dispute. Enjoyed elements of the first half performance. Enjoyed elements of that seeing Illiman and I finding decent areas and picking up the ball and running at the opposition. Some nice bits from Carlos Alcaraz and Beto. Obviously, what happened after the break, we'll need to talk about for a number of reasons. But it was an odd Saturday all around because obviously had that at the end of the day UK time. And I was technically off for the day, but I spent most of the time kind of glued to my phone trying to deliver transfer updates to people. So it's like, when is a day off not a day off? But in my case, it was Saturday.
Yeah, we are going to talk about all of that in one guise or another throughout the course of this show. But as ever, before we get fully stuck into it, just some housekeeping. We are sponsored by the Bridewell, as people who watched us on YouTube now will be able to see. Les has finished finally, Paddy, the brand new skins there. So we've got our own little logo there, a little corner on it. Obviously very fitting with the actual byline, double entendre name of the show. I'm glad Les has picked up on that with the logo. But yeah, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. Do get down there this summer if you can. Loads of great stuff going on. And as I mentioned on the show last week, some events coming up after Denby as well, with the likes of Barry Horn. So if you've not got tickets to that already, do check it out. Do message on Twitter if you want to get involved. If you watch us on YouTube as well, do leave us a comment. Do hit like, do hit subscribe. Same if you are listening on Spotify or on iTunes, especially if you are going to be in Chicago this week. And thanks to the people who did get in touch last week and said they're going to be either on the boat trip or coming to AJ Hudson's before the game on Wednesday. We're looking forward to seeing as many people there as possible. We are going to be doing a live show, but I think, as I said with Dave, on Saturday during the post-match podcast, it's basically just going to be a chance to have a drink with people, and we'll kind of be on stage for a bit. Looking forward to speaking to as many Evertonians as possible there. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. If you want to email us as well, as a lot of people do, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. We are going to talk about transfers. We are going to talk about Chicago. But first of all, Paddy, let's get stuck back into the game on Saturday. I was sat there in that first half, and obviously we were playing 5-4-1, and it was a bit of a weird team selection. I was fearing the worst. And then there was a point in the first half where I was sat there on the couch with me glass of red wine. I was actually really enjoyed the way we were playing and counter-attacking. And Jai was doing his usual things. Alcaraz, I think, looked as sharp as he has done in any game so far. Beto, number 9, playing well. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is the blueprint for how we're going to play away from home all season. We're going to counter-attack. And obviously we didn't score in that first half, and that ultimately kind of cost us in terms of the result. But obviously the performance was the most alarming thing in that second half in terms of the drop-off. But I suppose there is context to it, isn't there? In the sense that Bournemouth made a lot of changes. Bournemouth brought a lot of their better players on. And without wanting to go too deep into transfers, because that's our second point today, it kind of underlines the situation where Everton are at compared to teams who they'll probably want to be competing with next year, and certainly in the game after that as well. I don't know if you saw the substitutions list for United and West Ham. I think they had 15 subs each for their respective games in the Super Series. So good elements to take from that first half, I think, but it feels like whatever we do in these games and whatever excitement we can build going into the start of the new season, until we get more bodies in, it just feels like it's always going to be capped a little bit by there's not much in reserve if things do start to go wrong.
Well, yeah, there's absolutely nothing in reserve, really, is there? I mean, beyond maybe Tierno Barry coming on in the second half and looking lively, and I think that did have quite a strong influence on the outcome of the game and the way things went. It was obviously very warm in New Jersey for Saturday's match, around 30 degrees. Trying to work that out in Fahrenheit for particularly American listeners, Matt. I'm going to say 90s Fahrenheit. Obviously warmer still pitch side, as we know, with cooling breaks, particularly in the first half. And I think Everton basically wilted after the break. They expended so much energy getting on the front foot and pressing Bournemouth and admittedly creating chances to some extent that certainly after going in the level, the second half was always going to be a challenge. What Bournemouth did, and yes, certainly they brought on some good players, people like Semenyo, and have a much deeper squad than Everton. But what they also did was they were just able to rotate and bring in fresh legs, and I thought that was really quite telling. It's funny, isn't it? Because the first 45 was actually quite good. I thought, particularly with a makeshift squad, makeshift team. Don't think David Moyes was necessarily looking to pivot to a new formation, but kind of had to out of necessity because of how short they were. So you end up with Mikalenko and Nathan Patterson playing kind of right and left centre-back roles. In Patterson's case, that must be the first time he's ever done that. And it looked, for the first 45, like it was working okay. Do think Njai and Alcaraz were bright. Do think Beto led the line well. Certainly grew into the game after giving the ball away a bit early doors. And I would argue Everton shaded that first half without converting it into something more tangible. Beto has the big chance of the game, but is stretching. And I think Petrovic was out really quite quickly and quite well to deny him. And then what followed after the break, obviously, is the thing we will all focus on. And I'm not saying it's wrong to focus on that. It's a big talking point for where Everton are right now. It confirms a lot of the fears about where the squad is as it stands. And I think, obviously, Moyes continuing to be quite pointed in media duties, not only with kind of the host broadcaster, NBC, but also with the club channel in that very short interview, and then even ourselves in the interview Adam Crafton put out on the Athletic on Monday morning, where Moyes is effectively saying that they're short and they desperately need new players. This is the product of that, in essence. And yes, it's only pre-season. It doesn't matter loads, but I also felt very sorry for the people that have paid a lot of money to be in that Everton section at the MetLife Stadium on Saturday in New Jersey and witnessed the car crash of a second half performance where it just felt to me like some of those players were completely frazzled. Like Jake O'Brien, usually quite calm, unflappable. Like bizarre error from him in the heat. Nathan Patterson maybe less so, but poor again for that. And it feels like there's an awful lot of work to do. And I think that's the thing that everyone will take from this performance as decent as the first 45 was.
Yeah, I did want to talk about Moyes, and I suppose it's probably fine to bring it up in this bit rather than going to go on to talk about Aznou and Fofana in part two. But I think he's obviously been quite quiet, hasn't he? Early in pre-season, we didn't hear from him before or after Accrington or Blackburn. I mean, I think the first time a lot of people had heard from him in months really was that when the quotes started coming through from that Men in Blazers event in New York the night before the game against. We played Bournemouth on Saturday, and like it's weird, isn't it, with Moyes? Because I think we got so used to him down the years in his first spell, sort of being quite cautious and guarded and a lot of stuff which he says. But it sort of feels like since he's come back to Everton, and certainly since that last game at Goodison, every time he's had the chance to go on the record and he's been asked about transfers, he has been very bullish, hasn't he? Like, not to the point where, I suppose the only time he's toned it down a bit was in his press conference after the game on Saturday, where he was asked to clarify about 9 or 10 players. And I think he said 9 or 10, including the 3 we've got. And I think the night before he said 9 or 10 in addition.
More. So he said 9 or 10 more, didn't he, initially?
Yeah. So that's the only time he's taken a backward step with this, really, isn't it? And even in player releases, when we signed Thierry Barry and Travers recently, the last line of each one has been Moyes saying, we're trying to get more players in and all that kind of thing. Like he has been on the front foot with this, hasn't he? And it does you do start to get the sense reading between the lines, and obviously we don't necessarily know this for a fact, but he is starting to cut a frustrated figure. And I said to Dave on post-match on Saturday that, I'm starting to feel like he's getting a little bit annoyed. But I think seeing the club media interview and seeing the press conference after the game on Saturday, you can see it simmering there, can't you? That level of frustration now.
Yeah, and we've said before that the ideal time to integrate new players is on this pre-season trip to the US, because you have 3 games in quick succession time on the training ground, time to play with your new teammates in games, and all of that's really important. Even the kind of the team bonding side, which they'll be doing in between training sessions and matches. This was the opportune time for that to happen, and Everton haven't got the bulk of their business done. So you can kind of understand that frustration. It does feel like things maybe are starting to move again, and obviously they have done some business. But the other thing Moyes has had to contend with this summer, certainly in the early part of the summer, is injuries in positions of what I'd class as relative strength. So they head out to, certainly for the Bournemouth game, they head out onto the pitch with one fit centre-back in Jake O'Brien. Like we both said last week that if the season started tomorrow and everyone was fit, he'd probably be at right back. Moyes said 5 players were out of position in the Bournemouth team. I took that to mean basically the entire back line, because you had Garner and McNeil as makeshift wing backs. You had O'Brien, who's been playing right back at centre back, and you had Mikalenko and Patterson shifting inside. So there's your 5.
Especially got Alcaraz playing on the right wing as well when he was not that's his position.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Alcaraz, I suppose, was nominally on the right wing, but a lot of the time, both he and Njai were effectively second or third attacking midfielders, weren't they? In essence, the idea was that they come inside, and then the width is provided by McNeil and Garner. I actually thought Everton, on a separate point, did really quite well to free, particularly McNeil in that first half. But the delivery by his standards was really not where it usually is. But I mean, those 5 players out of position, and I think what that speaks to is just the lack of resources. I mean, you've got Tarkowski, who should play hopefully some role later in pre-season, as we've said on previous shows. You've got Jared Branthwaite, who's being kept behind because of what the club is describing as a minor injury, and he potentially, all being well, will be back for the Roma game. But let's see on that. And then Michael Keane missed the behind closed doors game against Port Vale and a few training sessions around that. So while he is out in the US and training and may well come into contention in Chicago, it was only Jake O'Brien. So even the squad is light anyway. But even then, kind of a series of problems at centre back has weakened a part of the pitch that you'd usually consider to be strong for Everton. And just where I think there's a risk, Matt, is in the sense that we're asking the same group of lads here out in the US in dodgy pitches at times, in heat, to go again and again, probably in the space of a week, 3 games. And I think that's where you risk other problems, actually. And honestly, let's hope that doesn't come to fruition. But I think you risk in making them go that bit further and play that bit more in pre-season. You risk something else. Like, I remember past pre-seasons where some of these lads would get 45 minutes and then they'd be taken off. But we've had examples already this pre-season, this summer, where a lot of them have been doing 75, even 90 minutes at times. It feels like a big ask. And I think to go back to the squad point, it's because of injuries, but it's also because of that lack of depth. And that's why it's important to get players in as soon as possible.
Yeah, and again, that was evidence, I think, with United on Saturday. They changed their entire outfield 10, I think 10 minutes into the second half, or maybe even a half time. So,
can do it.
Yeah. I think like the thing that sort of dawned on me with this, like talking about it a bit more in the last couple of days, is that, obviously there's a lot of focus on transfers and stuff like that, but I also think back to that game on Saturday and think, it's an opportunity against Premier League opposition to like get some tactical foundations and plans in place to an extent. And let's be honest, Everton are never going to play that system with that personnel in again. Are they? Like Patterson and Mikalenko are never going to play in a back three with O'Brien again, like barring like an absolute meltdown in terms of injury crisis. And like the players just, obviously in terms of fitness, it ticks a box, but everything else just, it's a bit of a waste, really, isn't it? What's the point of that when we're never really going to see it again? So yeah, frustrating one from that point of view, but hopefully things will pick up. I mean, in Chicago and where God knows what the 11 will be that day. We'll see. how that goes. Hopefully, Paddy, they're going to be joined by at least one new player in the coming days, because we're going to turn our focus to transfers now. And Adam Aznou, I don't know how you going with it.
I'm going with Aznou, but
Aznou, all right.
That's just instinctive rather than anything I've been told.
Yeah, Adam Aznou is having a medical at some point early this week, and he's set to join the camp in the US. So let's focus on him first, and then we'll talk about the Fofana stuff. I kind of feel like this has gone under the radar quite a lot because of stuff going on in the States and what Moyes had to say, and the links to Fofana, who's obviously this very exciting young player who costs a lot of money. But like everything I've read about this lad, all the clips I've seen, albeit quite limited, seems to suggest that Everton have really done the homework here and could have a potential gem on the hands.
Yeah, I think the other reason why it goes under the radar a little bit is because there are perceived much greater areas of need. So people look at the right wing and central midfield and probably other areas. I mean, we can debate until the cows come home whether right back or left back is more important. But what I wrote last week was that I knew more progress had been made on the left, and that was being prioritised. And the player they'd earmarked for that was obviously Adam Aznou. It goes under the radar because of that, and I think also because he's a 19-year-old, and people are wondering how much of a role he will play next season. I mean, my understanding here is that he's been brought in as competition to Mykolenko. Again, if we use probably the famous phrase on this podcast that if the season started tomorrow, then I still think it'd be Mykolenko playing at left back. But what they've gone for here is a young player with loads of potential, high upside. And I also think different skills to Mykolenko as well. I mean, Moyes likes at least one of his fullbacks to push on and provide width and provide quality delivery into the box. Mykolenko kind of does it in fits and starts, but I don't think anybody would rely on him to be a regular creative outlet for this Everton side. So from what I'm told about Aznou and from what I've seen of him in terms of clips and statistically and from the conversations I've had, he's a much more attacking option. Also capable actually of playing higher up the pitch if needs be. Carries the ball, likes to take players on. Still, obviously, at 19, loads to refine in his game. But Everton believe he can be a player for next season, at least as a kind of, or this coming season, as a cover option. And I do think it's quite exciting. I mean, he's had Barcelona on his CV already, Bayern Munich on his CV, been capped by the Moroccan national team, had a loan at Real Valladolid in the second half of last season and in La Liga. And by all accounts, did pretty well in a very poor side there. So I think this is exciting. It's kind of low-key exciting, and I completely understand why people are more focused on other areas. But I'm pretty pleased to see Everton, a little bit like with Tiano Barry, going for these kind of players who should grow, hopefully with the team and with the club, can eventually push on and become, you would hope, top players given their reputation and given their standings. And let's see how it goes. But it's a tick, isn't it, that they needed left back cover, because you saw on Saturday, if Mykolenko shifts in field, it's Dwight McNeil at wing back. I think the need for more on Saturday was quite evident.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not surprised that he's been brought in with the idea of being competition, because I think that's kind of how you've got to sell it to him, isn't it? If he's a Bayern Munich, because if you're going to say to him, you're going to come and sit on our bench and play for the under 23s every now and then you'd stay at Bayern Munich. I imagine do something very similar there by continuing your development. So I imagine Everton will have dangled the carrot of, listen, if you come in and do well, you're going to play. So yeah, I think it's probably important for Mykolenko as well. It feels like there's been times certainly the past couple of years where maybe when he's not been fully fit, he's been rushed back because he is the only natural left back in the squad, and that's kind of had a knock-on impact on his fitness. So yeah, makes loads of sense. Seems to be really interesting, talented player, and hopefully he can kick on going forward. And the other big name, Paddy, that was linked on Saturday in this kind of mad flurry of 2 hours of Everton transfer talk was Malick Fofana, who admittedly I've not seen loads of, but people who I know a lot about football have talked about him being very good. I'd seen him linked to Liverpool, I'd seen him linked to Bayern Munich, a lot of big clubs earlier in the window. Just kind of assumed that he was one of those really exciting young players who's come through to the Belgium national team, doing really well in France, and would just go there. So I have to admit, I was pretty stunned when I saw the tweet from Fabrizio Romano on Saturday saying that we were in advanced talks with him. And sort of feels like it's not been extinguished since then, but the temperature on it's been dialed down a little bit, I'd say, based on a few various reports. But people got very, very excited about this and are now getting a little bit worried that it's not going to happen. I mean, from your point of view, where are Everton at with this one?
Yeah, I think people are right to be excited by the link if we take that in isolation, because he is a very talented young player who has, as you point out, attracted interest throughout the summer, not just from Chelsea and Chelsea and Liverpool, I believe, but also Bayern Munich and various others. So I think he's seen as like kind of one of the next big talents in European football. Where it gets a little bit bizarre for me is that everything I'm hearing about him is that he is very much a left winger rather than a right winger. And like one of the questions I started asking when the name was doing the rounds was, well, could he play off the right and kind of come inside and do things a little bit differently there? Because I'd say the right wing is probably arguably a kind of a much greater area of need for Everton. But no, the messages came back. He's predominantly a left winger, and that's where normally you would expect him to play. So that puzzled me a little bit, because as talented as he is and maybe as big a difference maker as he could be, Everton are quite well stocked there. And like I say, the probably right wing seems a little bit more of an obvious need for them. The reporting on Saturday was interesting. I'm not talking about my reporting, but I'm talking about other reporting. Because this notion of advanced talks, it feels a little bit watery, a little bit thin to me. Like when you actually boil it down, what does that mean and what does it constitute? And basically where I got to with it when I asked around was, is the interest real? Yes. Have Everton spoken and sounded out both the players' camp and the club, Lyon, over a deal? Yes. And is he set to join Everton as of Saturday? And then the answer I got was no. There's other clubs involved, and we're waiting to see how this goes. So that's not to say he won't join Everton, but it is to make that kind of important caveat that Everton are not the only ones involved, and there wasn't the same level of confidence on Saturday over Fofana joining as there was with Aznou. And I think you saw that reflected. Anybody that read my 2 reports on those players, hopefully you saw that reflected in those pieces. So let's see how it goes. Where this gets interesting is this is quite clearly a player who could go to a Champions League club in the right circumstances. But how many of them are in for him right now? And how long is the player and his representative prepared to wait? So I'll give you an example. We've listed Bayern Munich as one of the clubs. They're in the process of a big money move for Luis Diaz, who also plays on the left wing. Now, you'd argue, unless Bayern are flush with cash and doing something we don't know about, it's highly unlikely they need 2 big money signings in that position. So there's one potential option gone. I'd keep an eye probably on Liverpool to see what they're doing, because in losing Diaz, they may well feel they need to strengthen as well, and they have been linked previously. But let's see if they choose to do something as well, and they may get to a point where, and we've spoken about this on previous shows, where players are looking at their options and going, this might not come off, but Everton is still here, and that'll be a decent move for me. So let's see how it goes. I've not got the same level of confidence as I had with Aznou, but equally I'm not going to say it's a 0% chance because it's definitely higher than that. This would be fun. This would be a really exciting one, but I think it's too early to get hopes up on it.
Yeah, just like on the left wing thing, like from reading a bit more about him and looking at clips of him and like how highly regarded he is. I just wonder if it's one of those where maybe Everton have got a sniff that they could do the deal, and they just thought he's just too good a player if it's available to just not get it done. And like, we'll just sort the right wing out with one-off McNeil, Alcaraz and Jai, winger X. Because I think it was Paul Joyce who reported, wasn't he, saying that we need two. They want two wingers, and like obviously there's been links with Tyler Dibbling as well and Kubo. So it feels like they're looking at multiple players in that position, and if they got him in and then maybe one other, then yeah, like that would make sense. But I think the general feeling I get around this and reading what people have to say online is that people are worried that we're kind of getting used. And when I say we, I mean Everton are getting used in the market to potentially flush out other teams and potentially draw the likes of one of those teams that you mentioned being into bidding for. And like I find that like notion mad, to be honest. But and maybe you'll be able to explain how it works a little bit more. Like I would find it bizarre that a tweet from someone like Fabrizio Romano would suddenly alert Chelsea, Liverpool, Bayern into going, oh, Everton might be on the brink of signing this fella. Let's get a move on it. Like, it sort of feels like behind the scenes and in the industry, people would surely know what the real situation is. And with that in mind, I suppose it's twofold. Like, looking at the transfer report, and one, why would this might not be the case in this instance by any means, but why would the representatives of a player go to someone like Fabrizio Romano, one, in this situation? And I suppose the second part of that is, why wouldn't they just go to the clubs of the other teams that he might want to sign for, like Liverpool or like Chelsea or like Bayern Munich, and say, listen, Everton are here, they're ready to do a deal. What is it about going to a reporter, do you think, that makes it quite a common tactic in regards to players who we're kind of linked with?
You know what? I struggle to answer this because everything you've said seems legit and fair. Like, why should people want to leak in that way, and wouldn't clubs know what's going on anyway? What I can tell you is that it does happen, and I think it has happened this summer, and I think there's been a perception, particularly around Everton, that it's happened this summer, and maybe not solely or only on Fofana, but maybe earlier this summer as well with Kenny Tete. So as bizarre as it sounds, I do think it does happen. I mean, if I have to guess why, then I think just the sheer level of publicity that it brings creates this kind of sense of urgency, and the clubs go, all right, this actually, it does look like it's going to happen. We have to move now, and then it stokes out some more interest. And then I think off the back of that, then people are a little bit more wary, aren't they? Certainly people more wary in media, like what's going on here? What is the actual story here beyond what is being parroted initially in the public domain? And I suppose that's where the value is for us as journalists, because we're looking at this and going, well, does that stand up to scrutiny? Is that right? What is actually going on here? And every time you report on something, you're asking yourself those questions. So it's a complicated business. It's a really complicated business, and you're striving for accuracy. And I suppose the best way to deal with it is to ask as many different people as you can, to make sure you're checking and checking again, and you get it right that way. Like, if we take the bottom line of this, are Everton interested in Malick Fofana? Then yes. But as of Monday, 5 p.m. when we're recording this, I'm not aware of a decision yet from the player. I wouldn't think that would be so far away, to be honest, unless something changes.
I suppose it is a gamble then, isn't it, in that regard? Like, I suppose going after players like this, like, let's be honest, like, he's a bit out of our league, isn't he, in that regard? Like, when you see some of the names that are mentioned regarding him, like, you think, wow, it would be a coup if they got it.
Yeah.
I suppose, I suppose it would be either really naive, I think, of them to sort of go down the whole path with this and then get to the end of the summer and he goes, actually, no, I don't want Everton. I'm going to go elsewhere, or I'm going to stay at Lyon. Sorry, lads, and we're left high and dry. And that's why I think, like, they must have had something. They must have had some indication somewhere. I imagine that is keeping them interested. Listen, maybe we'll come off this and tonight, or we'll get off the flight in Chicago tomorrow, and all the reports will be Everton have ended their interest in him. He doesn't want to join, and you move on. But it's almost like one of those, like the longer it goes on without a definitive end to it. Like I'm not calling it a saga because it's only like there was 2 days ago, but it feels a bit like that. But it almost feels like the longer it goes on, it feels like they must be getting some encouragement from somewhere, you would imagine, because to go all the way with this and then be kind of left scrambling around again at the end of the window would not be a good look, would it?
Well, yeah, and I think that's why you need a cut-off point on something like this, where you just say, right, that's not going to happen. Either that's too ambitious or the player doesn't want to join, and you move on. Because ultimately, Everton need players. As nice as it would be to have somebody like Malick Fofana, they need bodies through the door and good quality players, and they might end up having to move their way down the shortlist as I mentioned last week. There is a sense of urgency as a result. And to go on to your point about encouragement, my take is that when clubs bid for players, they feel themselves have had some form of encouragement, whether it's from the selling club, the player reps. Very, very rare now that a club actually bids for somebody without having that.
So as far as you're concerned, sorry, Paddy, have Everton put a bid in for him or not?
So as of Saturday, Everton were denying that a formal bid went in. Now, that's not to say that they've not said to Lyon, what would it take to get this done, and started discussing numbers. Sometimes this can be an exercise in semantics. And sometimes it can be, well, actually, we have sought a bid for him, but we've not formally registered it. So it's that's where they get around it. But that was the club's position as of Saturday when I checked it out, that no formal bid had gone in. I know there have been reports from elsewhere, particularly from France, saying that a bid did go in. Maybe that suits both Lyon and the player for that to be reported as out there. But what I'm saying is that regardless of that, Everton have been in. Everton have spoken to the club, have spoken to the player, and that's probably all that matters right now within that situation. So we'll see how it goes and how it progresses from here. I think that will probably be the first signing where you kind of scratch your eyes and go, oh, actually, Everton properly mean business here. And Everton are able to attract the quality of player that maybe I'd not expected. But we've all seen the David Moyes quotes where he's spoken about how they've aimed high and they've not got the yeses that they wanted so far. So I'm hoping this doesn't fall into the same bracket, but there's no guarantee it doesn't.
Yeah, it was interesting that Moyes pointedly said at his press conference that they'd actually gone for experienced players, and the two ones that one is close to joining, one is interested in, that's like out there at the moment, to two very young players as well. Yeah. So would suggest that obviously things going on behind the scenes that maybe we're not necessarily privy to, but
also Matt, like they're also the ones that are more tangible and easier to get over the line. I think he made that point within his piece. In the piece he did with us at the Athletic, he says something, and again I'm paraphrasing it, but he says something along the lines of, maybe we've been aiming too high, and maybe we need to look at like players like Barry and Aznou, that the younger players were they're kind of grateful for a step up to the Premier League and a move to a club like Everton. They haven't played in Europe yet to any significant level, so that's kind of not immediately important to them. And maybe also looking at players from the Championship and places like that. It's going to be much harder to pluck a name out of thin air to attract, like, say, João Palhinha from Bayern Munich than it is to take, again, completely hypothetically and not a link, Jason Knight from Bristol City. Because João Palhinha will want big money and he'll want to probably play in the Champions League. Jason Knight probably just goes, bloody hell, Everton are in for me. And it's as simple as that. So this is where the dynamic's fascinating for Everton, because I applaud them for showing that kind of ambition in the market. But to go back to a previous point, there probably comes a cut-off stage where you're like, well, actually, that's not happening, and we maybe need to go down a different path. There are lots of good players that aren't Malick Fofana, but if you can get Malick Fofana, even better.
Yeah, like this would be like I've never seen this lad play really, but the idea of him and what he represents, like going back to what we were talking about a few weeks ago in regards to Grealish, and whether he'd be quote a statement signing. Like Fofana is the exact sort of statement signing I would want them to make in that regard. Like go and make yourself like the best destination in the Premier League for up and coming players from across European football. And like if you can get him in and like a few more like behind him in like this window and the next few windows, like you're onto a great thing then, because you've got exciting players coming in. You get a turnover profit if you sell them in a few years' time. Like it just gives everyone like a buzz, and it just starts to change the mindset of, you know, and sort of perception of what the club's all about. Like,
well, it's more sustainable, isn't it? It's a more sustainable way of doing business. It's better in the PSR age. But I do agree with Moyes where he spoke about the need to get in some experienced players. Think about some of the ones they've lost in Ashley Young, in Decore, and in Begovic, either because they weren't willing to go to the wages, or they've let these players go. That's quite a bit of experience. So I don't think it can all be Adam Aznou, Malick Fofana, 19, 20-year-olds, even Tiano Barry at 22. There is going to need to be some form of balance within this. And I think they have wanted Everton some players who can come in and kind of be immediate first-team starters as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. They're obviously the harder ones to attract, as Moyes points out. It's easier to get young players on the way up who are looking to break into the Premier League. I reckon we end the window with a combination of all those things, to be honest. Given how much there is to do, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's needed, isn't it? Like massively in that regard. So yeah, we'll track with interest certainly, and be very excited if we get him over the line. Great reel of goals and skills on YouTube and all that. So I'm hooked already on Fofana if we can get it done. We're just going to finish off this week, Paddy, by talking about the week coming up. Obviously, by the time people are listening to this, I imagine on Tuesday morning, we'll be in transit to the United States. We're going to be in Chicago from Tuesday up until the weekend. We're going to be on the Everton boat trip on Tuesday night, jet lagged and tired, no doubt, but very excited about that prospect. And also, as we said last week, we're going to be doing a live version of this show in AJ Hudson's at 1 p.m. Central Time. And so that will be part of the event, which starts there at 10 o'clock in the morning, building up to the game. They're also going to be putting transport on throughout the day. We're going to have Mark Mosey and Rob Vera with us as well. Rob was giving us a stick on the kick about Paddy, saying that we're the divas and we're going to need our own particular type of board and all that sort of thing. But you know, we'll see. We'll see in that regard. But so looking forward to having chatting to the lads and answering people's questions and all that kind of thing. Getting people involved in the show on Wednesday. So do come along. Do say hello as well. If you spot us out and about, it'd be great. You're excited, Paddy? I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard nothing but good things about Chicago. You know, people been messaging us all week saying that they're looking forward to it, looking forward to meeting up with us. So sounds like it's going to be one big party, and I can't wait.
Yeah, particularly excited to see Chicago and get on that boat on Tuesday evening. Because of Saturday's result, maybe less excited to see Everton in action. Let's hope for an improved performance and recovery, a resurgence from Rob's favourite player, Michael Keane. That'll be lovely for all of us. It's a great trip, and I think it's important that Everton are doing things like that this summer. It's an opportunity with new American ownership, new manager, new stadium coming, to not only engage with existing fans, which I think is super important, but also to try and expand the fan base. I've seen some funny comments. Was it John Blaine from Toffee TV who overheard somebody asking in New York why there were so many Everton fans about? Like, I love that stuff. And it's why you do tours of that nature. So yeah, really, really looking forward to it and hoping for an improved performance from Everton, because I do think that helps. Well, while certainly nobody starts supporting Everton because of the vast success in recent seasons, it would be nice if occasionally there was some kind of excitement, some maybe even some goals, particularly from open play at some point. It's gonna be really good. Yeah.
Well, the people on Saturday got the authentic Everton experience. I suppose that's the one small comfort they could take from that. But no, really looking forward to it. Like, obviously, there's going to be loads of fans from different Premier League clubs in the city. There's a music festival on there that weekend we've discovered as well. So it feels like Chicago is going to be absolutely bouncing throughout the course of the week. So can't wait to get stuck in. Just a reminder, it's going to be 1 o'clock at AJ Hudson's in the build to the game when we do our bit of what promises to be a very, very exciting day for all things Everton. Paddy, we're going to do 52 or 5-2 as it might be in regards to our numbers. This is for the first time ever since we started doing this section of number 16. There is no player who has worn 52 for Everton. It's quite a sad day for this section, really.
Yeah, feels like the death of this section.
All right, we'll go that far.
No,
there's an
opportunity for more. There's not. I'm being silly.
Well, I asked people to sort of send in the like 52 or anything to do with 5 and 2 for this bit of the show. And the one that sort of caught my eye that came in, it was this one from Daniel Reel on YouTube. He said, not exactly 52 related, but I have fond memories of Everton 5, West Brom 2 in the COVID season. Dominic Calvert-Lewin scored a hat-trick. James Rodriguez's first goal for Everton in the Prem. And an assist. Great game. We were losing 2-1 that day as well. I think the goal for, was Calvert-Lewin's second, when Rodriguez plays a little chipped ball over the top of the West Brom defence to Richarlison, running onto it, and he squares it to Calvert-Lewin to tap in. That's probably one of my favourite Everton goals in recent years. It was just, I was watching us. I think did we watch it together in Loch Lane? Maybe me, you, Mike Diasha, and Dave. Yeah, maybe rings a bell for you.
Possibly. I mean, I was at some of those COVID games.
Maybe it wasn't yourself.
So I'm not 100% sure, and also my memory's foggy at the best of times.
James Rodriguez, you can't even remember it.
I do remember some of them. I remember the Brighton game as well, where he scored a double and he was brilliant. I've said this before, but almost feels like that period did not happen, even though I was sat there. If it happens in an empty stadium, is it really a thing? I'm still not so sure.
People were saying that about James Garner's free kick last week, weren't they? If no one was there, did it actually happen?
At Schrodinger's free kick, I'm not entirely sure. Entirely sure it's a thing. Although we did have video evidence of that at the very least. It'd be nice if we did it.
AI these days, Paddy.
Nice deep fake. It'd be nice if we did it in a proper competitive game for Everton. But yeah, going back to the West Brom game, what I loved about that period for Everton, beyond just the kind of the hope and the optimism that it brought, was that it felt like the first time in a while that Everton had stopped trying to bang down the door all the time and kind of bludgeon past the opposition, and they were able to just cut through them at will with guile and skill and expertise. Lovely ball from James Rodriguez, and obviously not the only one, because I think back to his control to take the ball out of the sky at Anfield and then slide a perfect through ball to Richarlison. But back then, with kind of James pulling the strings and Luca Dean at left back bombing on and Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison scoring goals, it did kind of feel like Everton were really onto something. Such a period of excitement for the club, and obviously second and on Boxing Day that year after beating Sheffield United away. So it unravelled pretty quickly from there. But a nice moment to look back on, Matt, and a decent idea, I thought, for 52, given the lack of incumbents or shirt holders for that number.
I just remember being so struck by how un-Everton a goal that one was. The one I mentioned, having a player who could play that little dink ball over the top and Richarlison surging onto it, players just walking it in effectively or tapping it in with an open goal, because the move's been so good. It's just taken the entire other team out of it. It was just watching a different team.
Walking the ball in.
Yeah, it was. It was like so many Calvert-Lewin's goals that season were like that, weren't they? Just a I remember one of the criticisms of him was he was a tapping merchant. It was like, oh my God, like the year before this, like, or 2 years before this, the lad was being slagged off for not being able to score those sorts of goals. So, yeah, great game, that, and that goal in particular stands out. So cheers for sending that one in. Cheers for sending that one in, Danny. It's really good memory. And if people have got ideas for next week, so if anything to do with 53, 5-3, anything tenuous you'd like us to discuss at the end of the show, do get in touch with us and let us know. We'll pick through one or two of the best ones. So it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. Also, leave us a comment on YouTube if you'd like. Hit subscribe as well. We're closing in on 5,000. Good to start doing more YouTube stuff this summer. Looking a lot more professional as well, thanks to Les's great design work there with the skins. So hit subscribe. Help us get to 5,000. That'll be a big help as we try and grow on this platform. And if you're one of our usual listeners on Spotify or iTunes, do leave us a rating. Do leave us a review. That's it from me and Paddy until next week when we'll be back on Monday. No doubt extremely tired and jet lagged after 5 days on the Isle in Chicago. But cheers to everyone for tuning in. If you see us in Chicago, do come and say hello. Really can't wait for that. Up the toffees. We'll speak to you all again very soon.